Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session. We're not looking at a play, we're not even looking at a masque or a royal entertainment or a lawman show. We're just looking at a random bit of literature. I mean, newspapers don't exist yet, but sort of precursors to newspapers and reportage and just strange ephemera in print culture is sort of bobbing about, and we're starting to have a little play around with some of the odder examples around the edges. And this is a text called A Strange and Terrible Wunder, wrought very late in the parish church of Bungay, a town of no great distance from the city of Norwich, namely the 4th of this August in the year of our Lord 1577, in a great tempest of violent rain, lightning and thunder, the like whereof have been seldom seen, with the appearance of an horrible shaped thing, sensibly perceived of the people then and there assembled, drawn into a plain method according to the written copy by Abraham Fleming. So it's a short account of some wonders, strange and terrible. I'm sure all of this is going to turn out to be totally true. This is going to be the early modern equivalent of, I don't know, a broadsheet paper with, careful accounts, and attributable quotes, rather than just a piece of tabloid trash. I'm sure it'll be one of those. Reading today, we have Alan, we have Lynn, we have Lois, we have Eric, and I'm your host Robert. As we're just going to say, have a little pootle around this thing and see what we get out of it. So we'll start with the preface to the reader, and I'll ask Alan to start us off, then Lynn, and then Lois, and then we'll pause.
Among men, it is grown in custom to have forewarnings of afterclaps, as beacons built upon hills, which are then set on fire when danger is imminent and at hand. Alarum bells serving to the same purpose, and other inventions of men proceeding and provided a policy to prevent or else to prepare against that which is perilous. Every man can arm himself when hazard is at hand to save him and his as he is able for the preserving of temporal things. Jesus, how painful and venturous we be, and no sooner shall a premonishment be given, but we are furnished. I warrant you to the proof. God warneth by signs from heaven, by fiery appearances in the air, most terrible, by wonders wrought on earth, strange and unusual, by inundations of waters beyond their appointed limits, by the removing of senseless trees from the natural place where they were planted, by the great power which the print of darkness through God's permission and sufferance hath recovered, by many late most miserable murders not to be named, much less to be committed among Christians, by insurrections full of danger and detestable treason beside the seas, by tumults and uproars between princes of foreign nations. What should I say more? By this trump of his sweet and heavenly gospel, sounded unto us out of the mouth of his messengers. But we will not be warned. We will tumble still upon the bed of wantonness and drink ourselves drunk with the wine of sensuality, that whilst we lay wallowing in the sink of our sodomitical sin, we may be consumed with a sodomitical or Babylonical destruction.
God, open the eyes of our hearts that we may see in what wilderness, among what wild beasts and devouring serpents we do wander, and give us minds mollified and made soft, that his works we may fear and be astonished.
The occasion that I have wrote this warning, which I would to God I had the grace to follow, was a wonder lately wrought in Norfolk, and so lately wrought that the terror of the same is at this instant fresh in memory. A spectacle, no doubt, of God's judgment, which as the fire of our iniquities hath kindled, so by none other means than by the tears of repentance it may be quenched. The order of the thing, as I received the same, I have committed to paper, for the present view and perusing of those that are disposed. It is grounded upon truth, and therefore not only worthy the writing and publishing, but also the hearing and considering.
Ripley's Believe It or Not. I mean, but with a very fire and damnation bent to it. I mean, it's both managing to be wildly over the top and exploitative, but it's also but with a moral. Yes. So we will all sink in the sin of our sodomical sin. We may be consumed with a sodomical or Babylonical destruction. So it's a warning, people. It's a warning. What happens in Norfolk is a warning.
Let's stay in Norfolk. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
The tone of it is really interesting, and ridiculously over the top. But then I think how it's trying to sell itself. I mean, that's the bit you're going to pick up. 1577. What was going on in 1577? I don't know what this was. Apparently, in the play world, we're around the time of All for Money by Thomas Lupton, Promus and Cassandra by Whetstone, and Misogynous. So maybe around the time of Climon and Clymedes. So that's the theatre world. I don't know what's happening politically. Lynn, any thoughts?
Yeah, 1577 to 1977, all the same thing. I mean, I don't know if you have this in the UK. I mean, I know you have tabloid newspapers, but the for a while there, anyway, tabloid newspapers in the US often had these like lurid headlines that had sort of apocalyptic or millenarian overtones to them. Like people seeing Jesus, and I cut open my orange for breakfast and I saw Jesus' face in my citrus. This has been going on for a while now. Like any time something amazing happens, it's God telling us to get our shit together.
Yeah, I don't know though. In the UK, it tends to be more prurient than God told us so. But yeah, I can. But the prurience is also in there. I think it's sort of part of that style. The two are sort of dancing together. Anyway, we will move on in a moment. Alan.
Yeah, I was almost expecting the news of the world standard tagline. At which point we made our excuses and left.
Yeah, some other defunct newspapers are available. Eric.
It reminds me a bit of the what is it? I think it's in Men in Black when you've got like there's this moment where they're talking about like all the trash newspapers of like.
Oh right, but in that movie's world, they're real reporting.
Yeah, and it's like yes, sort of. I spotted an alien in my backyard or something. My cousin was was abducted and then suddenly came back as an alien, or that kind of thing. And it's like this is what that reminds me of.
Well, yeah, I mean, we haven't got to the details of this horrible shaped thing, but the alien abduction mythology of today is very similar to the kind of demon, imps and demons mythology that you'll have in the early modern period. So the two are very, very interrelated and very connected. It's very National Enquirer, isn't it? So anyway, let us read on. I think Eric is up next. Did I make that up? Is it
Indeed.
Eric? It is you next. Okay, so let us go into the report of a strange and wonderful spectacle.
Sunday, being the 4th this August, in the year of our Lord 1577, to the amazing and singular astonishment of the present beholders and absent hearers, at a certain town called Bungay, not past 10 miles distant from the city of Norwich, there fell from heaven an exceeding and great and terrible tempest, sudden and violent, between 9 o'clock in the morning and 10 of the day aforesaid. Sorry, keep going.
No, pass on to Alan in the usual fashion.
This tempest took beginning with a rain, which fell with a wonderful force and with no less violence than abundance, which made the storm so much more the extreme and terrible.
This tempest was not simply of rain, but also of lightning and thunder, the flashing of the one whereof was so rare and vehement, and the roaring noise of the other so forcible and violent, that it made not only people perplexed in mind and at their wits' end, but ministers such strange and unaccustomed cause of fear to be conceived, that dumb creatures, with the horror of that which fortune were exceedingly disquieted, and senseless things void of all life and feeling shook and trembled.
There were assembled at the same season to hear divine service and common prayer, according to order in the parish church of that said town of Bungay, the people thereabouts inhabiting, who were witnesses of the strangeness, the rareness, and suddenness of the storm, consisting of rain violently falling, fearful flashes of lightning, and terrible cracks of thunder, which came with such unwonted force and power that, to the perceiving of the people at the time and in the place above named, assembled, the church did, as it were, quake and stagger, which struck into the hearts of those that were present such a sore and sudden fear that they were in a manner robbed of their right wits.
Okay, I'll pause there because, basically all that we've got is a really bad storm. It's a really bad storm. Hell, there might have even been a minor earthquake by the way they're describing that. And it's interesting, that is setting up, shall we say, the mental landscape of the people of Bungay. It's spelled Bongay, by the way, which I almost prefer. Yes, it's everyone is just very, very disturbed by the weather, and again, it's this an early modern perspective is something that the elements and the supernatural world is still a present thing but I think, especially as we're going forward, if we're applying a modern psychological approach here, that the weather has unnerved everybody so much that maybe now they're in a very receptive state for perceiving things in a slightly more sinister angle than really happened. But I don't know. Maybe what happens next is absolutely, literally true. I don't know. Any thoughts? Otherwise, we will move on. Okay, Eric, I think you're up next.
Immediately hereupon, there appeared in a most horrible similitude and likeness to the congregation, then and there present, a dog, as they might discern of it, of a black colour. At the sight whereof, together with the fearful flashes of fire which were then seen, moved such admiration in the minds of the assembly that they thought doomsday was already come.
This black dog or the devil in such a likeness, God he knoweth who worketh all, running all down the body of the church with great swiftness and incredible haste among the people, in a visible shape and form, passed between two persons, as they were kneeling upon their knees, and occupied in prayer, as it seemed, wrung the neck of both of them at one instant clean backward, so much that even at the moment where they kneeled, they strangely died.
This is a wonderful example of God's wrath, no doubt to terrify us, that we might fear him for his justice, or pulling back our steps from the paths of sin, to love him for his mercy.
To our matter again. There was at the same time another wonder wrought, for the same black dog, still continuing and remaining in one and the selfsame shape, passing by another man of the congregation in the church, gave him such a gripe on the back that therewithal he was presently drawn together and shrunk up, as it were a piece of leather scorched in a hot fire, or as the mouth of a purse or bag drawn together with a string. The man, although he was in so strange a taking, died not, but, as it is thought, is yet alive, which thing is marvellous in the eyes of men, and offereth much matter of amazing the mind.
Okay, I think we should start unpacking this. So it starts off with the story of it's thunder and lightning, and then there's a dog running up and down the church. Which I kind of up to that point I'm going, okay, I believe all of this. There was a dog, there was a storm. This is all fine. Two people get instantly have strangled, hung while kneeling. I mean, it's not. There's two things going on there with the whole one instant clean back. Run the necks of them both at one instant clean backwards. So snap their necks more. Perhaps that's more the way it's describing. They strangely died. Now there's that piece of information that the dog killed them in an instant by running past them, and then it's this is a wonderful example of God's wrath. Now, I genuinely don't think that's actually what it means, even if it happened, which it didn't. Is that we have this problem with jest books sometimes when they say, and this is the moral of the story, and we go, no, it really isn't the moral of the story, man.
And how do you know that God wasn't angry at somebody? Yes.
Yeah, but they were kneeling and praying. I mean,
Yeah, so how is that? Yes, exactly. How is that pulling them back from the paths of sin?
yeah.
Like if they'd been drinking or carousing or lying or doing something else objectionable and had died in the middle of their sinful behavior, like you see, but yeah, you're there kneeling in prayer and this
in
black
church.
dog in church, like in church, like what?
Well, I think he did it to scare the rest, didn't he? I mean, pour encourager les autres, as they say. Yes.
So yeah, and then we have the other one who is sort of shriveled up, but not dead. So maybe he's just quite wrinkly. I don't know.
As it is thought, he's still alive. It's funny you can't get information about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I that said, this would make a great episode of the X-Files. I mean, I think they do keep trying to reboot it. I think this is definitely one. I really like it. I mean, I'm just going with the story that basically there was a dog and some people got quite scared, and then people started making stuff up. I'm questioning the truthfulness of this account.
It's particularly that it's a black dog. I mean, we've had that black dog already in The Witch of Edmonton. There clearly was a thing about black dogs.
Oh yes, yes, and various other potential familiars that come out of the literature about witches and etc. And other kind of demonic activities. Eric.
Well, also the sort of this is a wonderful example of God's wrath. It sounds weirdly scientific, like, you know, it's like when you're looking at sort of, I don't know, equations, or like sort of like reading a biology textbook that is describing something, and or like a chemistry textbook where you know, this is a wonderful example of I don't know, a chemical reaction that is endothermic or something. You know, it's kind of like right, that, but it's like, this is a wonderful example of God's wrath.
Right.
Yes.
Like
I think we've got to lean on the wonder part.
Have a lens. It's like, this is a wonderful example of convergent evolution. Like,
yes, it is wondrous and terrible, strange and terrible wonders this text describes. I recognise the name of Abraham Fleming. I still haven't figured out what else he's written that I'm aware of, but I'm sure it will come to me later. But he's written this, and you know, good on him. Good. This is a piece of writing that has survived over 400 years to be with us today. Sometimes the fires of history are so kind. Anyway, let us continue. I will break the flow. I will read the random one-liner for you, but after the next speech. Who did we get to? Who did we get to? Eric spoke last. So Eric next, is it?
I think so.
Okay, Eric, take it away.
Is that from Moreover?
Moreover. I'll take the random one line, then we'll jump to Alan.
Okay. Moreover, and beside this, the clerk of the said church, being occupied in cleansing of the gutter of the said church, with a violent clap of thunder was smitten down, and besides his fall had no further harm, unto whom being all amazed this strange shape whereof we have before spoken appeared, albeit he escaped without danger, which might peradventure seem to sound against truth and be a thing terrible. But let us leave thus or thus the judge, and cry out with the prophet.
O Domine, O Lord, how wonderful art thou in thy works.
At the time that these things in this order happened, the rector, or curate of the church, being partaker of the people's perplexity, seeing what was seen and done, comforted the people, and exhorted them to prayer, whose counsel, in such extreme distress, they followed, prayed to God as they were assembled together.
Now, for the verifying of this report, which to some will seem absurd, although the sensibleness of the thing itself confirmeth it to be a truth, as testimonies and witnesses of the force which rested in this straight-shaped thing, there are remaining in the stones of the church, and likewise in the church door, which are marvelously rent and torn, the marks, as it were, of his claws or talons. Besides, that all the wires, the wheels, and other things belonging to the clock were wrung in sunder and broken in pieces.
And, which I should have told you in the beginning of this report, if I had regarded the observing of order, at the time that this tempest lasted, and while these storms endured, the whole church was so darkened, yea, with such a palpable darkness, that one person could not perceive another, neither yet might discern any light at all, though it were lesser than the least, but only when the great flashing of fire and lightning appeared.
We'll pause there. Several things once again to unpack. I love that backtracking of, I should have mentioned this earlier, that it was really dark. Did I say how dark it was? It was really dark in the middle of this storm. I like the fact that he immediately goes, well, I do have sources. Even though what I've written here is so self-evidently true. And then what we have here is an example of poor health and safety in the workplace, of someone in the middle of a massive storm where it is apparently pitch dark. He decides to climb up, and that's the moment to do the gutter. Well, it's almost a shame he survived, because frankly he deserved everything he got, because presumably. It says violent clap of thunder was smitten down. I mean, it might be that actually that if there was lightning, he didn't get struck by lightning, but somewhere near him got struck by lightning and he fell because of that, or just that the noise surprised him, so he fell and he got lucky and bounced. But yeah, frankly, the clerk of the church is an idiot. So really, no. Alan.
And surely, if divine service is going on, the clerk ought to be on duty at the books.
I'm noticing some inconsistencies in this narrative.
Yeah.
Lois.
Yes, I was thinking that he might have started cleaning the gutter well before this, rather than during the storm. I mean, the storm seems to have come on very suddenly. So he might have been up there cleaning the gutter before he knew there was going to be a storm, but it still does seem very odd to be doing it during the church service.
Maybe he knew there was a storm coming. He didn't think it was going to be this bad and thought, I better do the guttering first. And then once he was up there, he lost track of time. The service has started. Suddenly it all went black. He couldn't get off the ladder. Lightning, thunder, down he falls. I mean, that's a scenario that feels entirely plausible. And there isn't a single objection to Lois.
Yes. You notice also that he wasn't hurt apart from having fallen that great height.
Well, that's why I take it he wasn't actually struck by lightning. Maybe, there was a strike of lightning near him or thunder, or so he was distracted and he fell off. That is not none of that supernatural. Even if he was struck by lightning, that still wouldn't be supernatural. The dog had nothing to do with it. I mean, that's the bit when they said the dog then appeared and then nothing happens.
I keep thinking, is the dog this monster? I kept waiting for them to tell me what the monster looked like. Surely it didn't just look like a black dog.
I think it was just a dog just ran into a church during a storm, and that's the story. That's basically it. Although apparently it clawed at the doors. There were marks as of its claws or talons.
Yeah. I find it very odd that we don't get a description of it. I think it is a monster, not just a dog.
Maybe it's a very, very, very vicious dog. Just very vicious. And the clock's been damaged. All the wires, the wheels, and other things belonging to the clock. So it's run amok.
Yeah, might have been struck by lightning.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some more things which we should not likely pass over, apparently. So there's some quick fire things. You get the impression that having got to the end of writing this, he's gone, I might need to beef my story up because it needs some more stuff because it's maybe not very convincing. So I think that's where we're going next. Is it Eric again? Yes, okay. I'll read you in. You can do the line after. These things are not lightly with silence to be overpassed, but precisely and thoroughly to be considered.
On the self-same day, in like manner, into the parish church of another town called Bilberry, Bilberry, yes, not above 7 miles distant from Bungay above said, the like thing entered in the same shape and civility, where placing himself upon a main balk or beam, whereon sometime the rood did stand, suddenly he gave a swing down through the church, and there also, as before, slew 2 men and a lad, and burned the hand of another person that was there among the rest of the company, of whom divers were blasted.
This mischief thus wrought, he flew with wonderful force, to no little fear of the assembly, out of the church, in a hideous and hellish likeness.
These things are reported to be true, yea, by the mouths of them that were eyewitnesses of the same, and therefore dare with so much the more boldness verify whatsoever is reported.
Let us pray unto God, as it is the duty of Christians, to work all things to the best, to turn our flinty hearts into fleshly hearts, that we may feel the fire of God's mercy and flee from the scourge of his justice.
And it's what we have next labelled is a necessary prayer, because frankly, after all these horrors, I think we need to just exorcise the room. So, O God, which has promised to be a shield to such as flee to thee for succour in their necessities, and with thy wings to overshadow them, that they feel not the scorching heat of afflictions and miseries, we beseech thee that although we, through the infinite and immeasurable sins that we commit, provoke thee to smite us with the iron rod of thy wrath and judgment, yet that it would please thee to remember that we are but frail flesh, subject to sin, and too prone to offend, that it should please thee to cast thy gracious countenance upon us, and to stretch out thy silvered sceptre of peace unto us, that being restored into thy favour, from which our offences have separated us, we may shroud ourselves under the shield of thy safeguard against all manner of annoyances whatsoever, through Jesus Christ, our only Saviour and Redeemer, in whose name, as he hath taught us, we say and pray, ab omne malo libera nos domine, deliver us from all evil, good God, amen. I'm sorry. It's like we suddenly have the best story at the end there. It's like, we have this story, there was a dog and some people fell over, and then this one turns up and it swings down through the church, burns the hand of another person, and then diverse others were blasted. This is a sodding Balrog, not a dog.
Yeah. No, it flies. I mean, this is the monster.
Yeah.
But it's odd. It says it was the like thing, the same thing that was in the other church, except that he never described the one in the other church.
Beyond being a black dog.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the more exciting story. I want to see the film version of that one. Whereas the other one feels like maybe the prologue to the film is, the first sort of 10 minutes say, the dog's coming, the monster's coming, and it scared some people in church, and then credits, and then you have the blasting and the swinging down and the flapping wings and stuff. Alan?
I don't believe it is local journalism. There's no names and no ages.
Yeah, I gotta say, for all this stuff, lots of people told me it was true, is not actually the most convincing of evidence here. Could I have some death certificates, please, of some of the people who died? For all we know, we all go to the records office and there'll be some record of this terrible incident. There are no records of this terrible incident, I'm fairly certain. I actually came across this partly, not actually normally through my normal process of just pootling through various resources. I actually read about this in a book about something totally different. There is nothing else. Lynn?
Yeah, what was I going to say? It's just weird that this stuff happens in churches. Like, that's, if you want to teach people a lesson about being ungodly and sinful and don't do that. So my guess is there was this terrible, unseasonable, unprecedented storm. Something maybe did coincidentally happen in these churches about 7 miles apart about the same time. Maybe a couple of people had heart attacks or strokes during services because they were so terrified of the storm, and then out of that grew these weird stories. But if you're going to try to tell a story that has like a Christian moral, having these terrible things take place in sacred spaces is a weird choice.
Lois?
Yeah, but probably churches were the one place in many communities where you would get an enormous number of people gathered
Right.
together, or enough
Right.
people, in fact, to have mass hysteria, which I think is what happened. And there is an account, I mean, something I remember reading about people in a London church. It might even have been St. Paul's, I don't think it was. But anyway, somebody suddenly said that the steeple was starting to fall, and everybody got into a total panic and, started running out of there and so on. I think it could easily happen where you get a lot of people gathered together, and especially if they're already in this kind of mood about God's wrath and, signs and everything symbolizing something horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in the mass hysteria element of this because it does feel like, maybe something weird did happen in the sense that a lot of people panicked. Maybe the two did suddenly have a heart attack while praying because this dog ran at them in the dark, and that's vaguely based on truth, and then someone fell around about the same time while doing the guttering, but maybe it had nothing to do with the church, and it was just, or it happened at a different time, and it's just got connected. And maybe there's someone who's just a bit wrinkly and shriveled, and that has absolutely nothing to do with this whatsoever. That's just what he looks like, and they've connected it, and then, and down the road something even worse happened. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure. Blasted. Yeah. Down the road, it's always a Marvel movie. It really is. The church is always more hellish. So, yeah. I've really enjoyed this. I kind of want to do something with this, but I don't know what. I don't know. We will occasionally do more of these kinds of things every so often as the mood hits me. I don't know if any of them are going to be quite as entertaining as that one, but they're always interesting. And as I say, speaks to print culture. It speaks to the mentality of the time. It speaks to all sorts of things. Any final thoughts in the room? Anyone want to add anything? Just wave. I won't go around and force you all to have a final thought on this slim tract of words. Eric.
I'm kind of sad that Vincent Price is dead, because you could totally cast him in this film as sort of the preacher, deliver us all from evil or something. Because it's totally one of those you could use it to make one of those old school horror films, sort of what was it, the haunted house, or the brain that wouldn't die, and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean Hammer would have been all over this. Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee would have had lots of fun. In fact, they did do Hound of the Baskervilles, which is not dissimilar to this in that the monster at the end did turn out to be a rather cute dog that wasn't in any way scary whatsoever. So that's sort of where we are. Any other final thoughts anyone wants to throw in, Alan?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether anything could be found about the author's religious position, because an awful lot of it would seem to me to fit with a certain type of hellfire preacher. Thinking of some of the more extreme Protestant sects in Northern Ireland, for example, or maybe some of the evangelicals from the American South.
It fits within that logic. I mean, it's very much a learn your lesson people kind of thing, isn't it? It runs interestingly in parallel, looking at the book of Dr. Faustus, Dr. John Faustus, and that kind of the moralizing that goes with that. They were much more established and lengthy text than this sort of more opportunist work, but comes about almost not that far in the future.
And I think the other thing that you've got is the Black Dog has got a considerable backstory into folk stories and so on, which I think is something that Sarah, if she was here, would probably comment on, because she's well versed in that area. Going back into pagan myth.
Well, I should know this because I did read about this recently. I'm not sure how far actually it does go back and how it functions in that way. Sometimes we interconnect things and think they're older than actually they are. But that may be so. But I'm going to be bit careful about saying that is so, because this might be not as old as we think it is. Anyway, I am going to close this session now. All that remains, thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Givers' minds mollified and made soft.